Hello and welcome to Season 4, Episode 2 of Logicast, the AWS News podcast brought to you by Logicata. I'm Carl Robinson, CEO and co-founder of Logicata, and I'm joined today by the man who needs no introduction because he's actually updated his nickname into his on-screen description. I apologize if you are only listening to the podcast and not viewing the video stream, but John, as always, Goodall has updated his name on the video stream, so I don't need to make that introduction anymore. How are you doing today, John?
Well, I mean, you've done that something like 40 times now, at least. I figured I'd just lean into it at this point.
It has become a bit of a catchphrase, and in fact, I've even had listeners quoting it back to me in an email. I don't know if you saw that. A listener and customer had actually referred to you as John, as always, Goodall. So clearly, something's catching on.
I'm a meme at this point, clearly.
Well, that's great. I mean, you were complaining the other day that you didn't have enough animojis on our internal Slack, but you've gone one better than that. You've just become your own meme. So there we go. There's not many of us that can claim that. Anyway, stop waffling on about animojis and memes. We are, in fact, joined today by a very special guest, Niklas Westerstråhle, who is a fellow AWS community builder, AWS ambassador. And for those of you watching on video, you'll also see that he's an AWS Gold Jacket wearer. So how are you doing today, Niklas?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. And it's always a pleasure to get to join the community and give something back to the community. And yeah, before we started, Carl made me put the jacket on. So if you're watching the video, this is how it looks. And they do really exist. And unicorns, so the guys who actually have these, we do exist. And yeah, and if you don't know what it is, it's cool. The coolest swag you can get from Amazon. When you complete all of their certifications, you're eligible to get one of these.
Nice. And how many is that now, Niklas? 12, 13?
12, yeah.
Yeah.
It's
some people who have done some expired certifications may have 15, but I only have 12.
And do you have to hand the gold jacket back if you don't remain current on your certs, or do you have it forever?
Well, I think you get to keep the jacket, but do you dare to put it on anywhere after you lose one of them? So you kind of have to keep yourself up to date to wear it proudly when you go to events like there's only one event where you can actually wear this and be proud. It's reInvent, or maybe some AWS summits, but don't really go out and party on Friday evening.
I don't know. It looks quite waterproof. Spill a beer on that, it'll just run clean off.
No, I think it might. Maybe we'll do karaoke later next week or weekend. Yeah.
Is it dry clean only?
I have no clue. But you can buy these off of Amazon if you want to.
You can't buy. Yeah.
Well, you can buy one of these, but it's not the same thing as when you get it for free.
Yeah, you have to. Well, you don't really get it for free, do you? You have to earn it.
You or your company pays a lot for the exams to actually do that, so it's not free. No.
Yeah, the exams, the training, the hours of blood, sweat, and tears that goes into learning all of that, cramming all of that knowledge into your brain to achieve those certifications. So there's no such thing as a free gold jacket.
No, it's a statement piece. But yeah, I can say that I know a little bit about AWS after I put this on.
I think you can safely say
Finnish mentality is that none of us say that we're the best, but they're like, oh, I can't do this. But yeah, I can actually say proudly that I'm one of the best guys in Finland for AWS.
That's interesting, actually.
A few, but
how many gold jackets are there in Finland?
I know directly out of head at least of 4 or 5, so there are a few, but not too many.
Yeah, pretty exclusive club. So apart from doing lots of AWS training and certifications, what else do you do in the community and for a living, Niklas?
I work at Knowit, which is a premier partner for AWS in the Nordics. We have offices in Finland, Sweden, Norway, Denmark, Poland, maybe somewhere else as well. About 4,000 people work there. consultancy. You can basically get anything from us. It's like a full stack house for anything digital, whether it be whatever cloud you want to work or and what. My position there is an AWS tech lead, which basically means I do a lot of stuff from architecture to leading trainings and certifications programs internally, and working with different client projects depends on what I'm needed for. For the community, I'm mostly a public speaker, I guess. I speak at meetups. I've spoken at summits. I've done some online trainings for like the Women Who Code program here in Finland, something that is really cool. I try to help out where I can, and then I write the mandatory blog post or two every now and then, because you have to.
Well, and I think you mentioned when we met back in December that this will be your first podcast. So despite all that great community work you're doing, this is your first podcast. Is that right?
That's actually right, yeah. And I didn't take a sneak peek at what you guys have been doing previously, so this is all new for me. I do listen to podcasts on when I'd walk the dog, but this is my first one I'm actually participating, so thanks for having me.
Well, tomorrow, when you walk the dog, you'll be able to listen to yourself. So what could be better than that? So on that note, let's move on to what we're actually here for. So we're not here to talk about Niklas's gold lame jacket. We are, as regular listeners to the podcast will know, here to talk about AWS news. So once a week, I curate a list of AWS news that I share via my weekly AWS News Roundup newsletter. And then John and I pick a set of the articles from the newsletter that we'd like to talk about with our guest. So we do, of course, have such a set of articles to discuss. And the first is an article from the AWS database blog entitled Announcing Configurable Point-in-Time Recovery Periods for Amazon DynamoDB. So a new enhancement, I guess, for DynamoDB. John, what are your thoughts on this one?
I'm mixed. So point-in-time recovery, let's put that as an aside for the minute because I have mixed feelings about that. This is something that's been around in kind of the wider world, not just within AWS, forever and a day. It's, just continuous backup is the other name of it. It's just, you're checking it every kind of second or so, just update the backup, updating the backup. And that means you can go right to a very granular point of, the data was deleted there, so I'm going to go right back to here and then solve my problem, which is fine and it's great and it's wonderful, but it's slow. So if you try and restore from a regular snapshot for RDS or DynamoDB or whatever, it's pretty quick to stand those things up. For point in time, it kind of has to stand that up and then it will sort of roll things to that point where it's just sort of slow. And that's sort of my issue with this is I don't have a problem with it being available and it's great if you need that kind of per second granularity, but it's slow and there are points where it doesn't necessarily give you that per second granularity that it's advertising, because, and maybe DynamoDB won't suffer from this, but I know RDS certainly does, is backups that kind of fall over your maintenance window will just magically fail and they kind of don't tell you that this is going on. Now DynamoDB doesn't have that problem in terms of maintenance windows and such because it's not running on servers that you care about. But I'm wondering if we're going to see that sort of behavior as well, because we've seen that before.
Well done, John, for carrying on there where we momentarily lost Niklas from the video feed as well.
Internet tends to do weird things, but I'm still here, and I kind of, point in time recovery. As always, John said a lot of that, but the news actually only tells a little bit of a story that by default you have 35 days worth of data that it's storing anyway. And now it's giving you the opportunity to change between the current 35 and, not 0, but 1 day. So it's not going to keep as much of continuous backups as you'd think. And what I took out of this was like, this is like a sustainability related item. Like, why store more data that you need? So if you know that your business is never going to need to go back 35 days worth of changes in your database, then why not shorten it and save a little bit of be a little bit more green in the way of doing that.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought about the sustainability angle on here, but do you think anybody's going to miss that data that's no longer being stored? I guess not, if AWS has decided to, make this change. But
you sort of have to go in and do it, don't you?
I would assume that for them to even make this change into DynamoDB, it must be that the multiple clients, multiple large organizations have the need for not being able to recover for 35 days. Why is that? I can't really come up with something that, like, why wouldn't you have longer backups? But maybe there's some regulatory requirements maybe that do that, but I can't come up with what that is actually.
Yeah, the only one that comes to mind is GDPR has requirements around being able to purge people within a certain time frame, but I don't know if that's 30, like less than 30 days or not. I haven't read it recently.
Could be something like that.
It's a funny one as well, because they talk about the pricing as well, and they say the pricing is still based on the size of the table, regardless of how long you're hanging on to the data. So it's, regardless of what your sort of recovery period. So it's an odd one.
Yeah, well, so a lot of people won't care at all because you're paying the same as anyway. So it's, well, I'd say go and put it as low as you need it. That would be my kind of approach on this from the sustainability angle. But other than that, it's, if your regulation requires that, then.
Yeah, we've said this before a few times, is AWS is very good at responding to customer demand. But the question is, was this lots of customers or one very big one that asked for this?
We're never likely to be privy to that information.
No.
I wish we had that data. That would be so cool.
Anyway, on that note, let's move along to our second article for this week. This is a new feature announcement. The AWS Compute Optimizer has now expanded idle and right-sizing recommendations for Amazon EC2 auto-scaling groups. Compute Optimizer, of course, has always been offering idle and right-sizing recommendations for instances, but now it's adding that into auto-scaling groups. Trying to get my head around this one a little bit, John, as to how that actually works. Can you enlighten me?
I can try. I can certainly try. Historically, it was looking at instances that were underutilized, and that's a measure of CPU utilization. So it's not entirely accurate because you might have a very low compute resource that just sits there using a lot of memory. I'm thinking in-memory caches and things that kind of do that. But that's kind of the metric that they've got to work with. So that's kind of what they're using. And it would look at those resources and say, well, this is underutilized on the basis of it sitting at 5% CPU constantly. You could probably go down a few tiers, save yourself some money. Wonderful. An auto-scaling group isn't actually that big and clever when you think about it. The scaling metrics are kind of interesting because you look at you can look at CPU across your cluster, and that's probably what this is doing, but that's sort of a poor metric. Or you can look at requests queuing up at your load balancer, but that's only relevant if it's actually serving web requests. And if it's not serving web requests, if it's doing some sort of high performance compute or something like that, churning a batch job, for instance, you're not going to have that metric. So you're back to the poorer metric of CPU. And that's, I suspect, what's going on here is it's looking across the fleet of your instances and saying, okay, these are all kind of underutilized, but they're actually part of an auto scaling group. So what you could do is you could either reduce the vertical size of your instances within your fleet, or you could reduce the horizontal footprint and have the same size instances, but fewer of them. You might have 10 and they're all sitting there at 20% CPU. If you cut down to 5, they might all be sitting at sort of 40 or 50% CPU, and that's a better utilization. So it's just giving you options, right? It's talking about scaling in both horizontal and vertical directions, which is, it's good. It's interesting. These tools are never perfect, though, because as we've sort of said, they lack the business context. So it might be entirely valid that these instances are sitting there using a very low amount of CPU because they could be using a lot of memory, for instance, doing something else. They might be a storage server, which use EFS, but they might be doing something else that it's not really aware of. So take any recommendations that you get with a pinch of salt, but it's always good to see these sorts of things being spread out and giving you more options to reduce both your cost and your environmental footprint as well, because these things are related.
Niklas, your thoughts on this? I know you're keen on the sustainability angle of these things.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of my favorite topics, kind of. I talked about sustainability as well, and I plan to talk about it later on also. So what this brings is kind of more visibility into your auto scaling nodes as well. So like John said, that there you might have a fleet with different types of servers and with different utilization of CPU and memory. And I think this will now give you kind of better instance types related to your actual workload. I don't know what all the metrics are that they're going to pull in there to see it. But if you have a low CPU utilization and a high memory ratio, maybe it will give you a high memory instance with a lower CPU than what you're using currently when you're kind of reserving CPU that you don't need. Interesting to see, like vertical scaling has been it's not that easy. Horizontally you can do, and if this kind of gives you more tools into viewing what kind of resources you actually need, then that's always good. I've seen the Compute Optimizer gives a lot of good recommendations. So if you've never taken a look at that, go take a look at it, and it gives you a lot of options.
Cool. So we like this then, in general.
In general, yeah, I do enjoy anything that gives the community more tools into selecting correct type of instances, something that will make your workload run better, be more sustainable, and hopefully also cost you less. So that's like
Excellent. Okay. Well, on that note, let's move along to our third article for this week. And this is an article from the AWS Cloud Operations blog about automating systems manager patching reports via email and Slack notifications in an AWS organization. This is one that John and I actually spoke about earlier in the week. I actually got confused. I thought we'd spoken about it on last week's podcast, but we just had a chat about it in between recordings because we do other things other than just record podcasts. We have got day jobs as well.
We go for nice lunches and look at user group values.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's not all hard work. Anyway, we had a chat about this because I thought it could potentially be interesting for what we do in our business when we're managing customer environments, because we do a lot of patching with Systems Manager for our customers. But Niklas, when we were just having a chat in the preamble, I know you had some pretty strong opinions about this. So I'll come to you first on this one, and you can share your opinions with us.
Yeah, all right. Well, maybe not strong opinions, but I have, of course, an opinion. Like, I kind of don't like these solutions that are brought on. Maybe they work. I took a look at the architecture. Sure, it works, but wouldn't people who already want this have already built this once? And then it's like, is this the best way of doing it? Well, I didn't put that much time into it that I would have thought about like how this actually works and does. I've had some issues with a custom event bus in Event Bridge, so it not really working as I expected, and I have some step functions that don't work because of that. But I'm still debugging on why I don't get all the events into the custom bus. So I have a little bit of an issue with the whole architecture. Like, I do like that they deliver you visibility and give you a solution for that. But why wouldn't this be kind of a click a button on the console and you have that, or run one API call with the endpoint and everything would work? Why do you need to have everything then in your own account in different places? Maybe it's for visibility into the code and into what happens, but I guess a lot of this functionality could be just integrated into the systems manager itself.
Yeah, we've said that on a lot of these types of solution posts before, and I have actually asked the question as to whether these these tools, the usage of these tools, is monitored to kind of feed into what the teams. The product team should be adding into the console, and the answer was no, it's not. But yeah, so I'm not sure how that kind of prioritization goes on within AWS. But yeah, what are your thoughts, John?
Yeah, I asked some slightly awkward questions when I was at reInvent at a SSM patching workshop, and the poor SAs were very coy with their answers, let's say, trying not to get in trouble. So, well, I don't know what sort of business we're doing with you as a customer, or what sort of NDA. It's like, hi, I'm a community builder and a user group lead. I've signed every NDA that you can think of. Please just tell me. No, sorry, I'm not going to do that. Okay, damn. But yeah, this I'm mixed about. I like it conceptually. I don't like the whole fan in setup particularly. Custom event buses bother me a little bit. It's like this should just work, but fine. I get the sort of need for a way of fanning in when you've done this organization setup, because when you set up patching, which is reasonably new actually at an organization level, it's done through central stack and stack sets and quick setup, and I have all sorts of issues with SSM patch manager quick setup. I have all sorts of problems with it. It just doesn't work out the box. Every time I've tried to use it, it just doesn't work properly. So I have problems with that. This generally I'm okay with. If you look at it on a per account basis, and then potentially you could do your own wrapper around that. It's quite useful from our perspective because we deal with a lot of, I don't call it legacy, because legacy is used as a bad word these days in tech. Legacy is a pejorative term these days. But if you're dealing with a lot of server-based infrastructure and you still have to worry about patching, if you're not, doing these containers and Lambda and all this jazz, you still have to worry about patching, and you still want to know when things are coming through. And if you have a large number of places where you're having to think about patching. So our customers, we worry about it for them. So this is useful for us because we have to look at patch reports across reasonably large fleets because we're just looking at lots of different accounts. Or if you are a particularly big business and you have lots and lots and lots of different workload accounts going on with lots of big servers in them, then again, this is useful because you don't want to have to go into every single sort of account and go, oh, these have all patched okay, oh, those have all patched okay, oh, that one's had a problem, I need to go and investigate that. So I'm okay with this generally. What I would like from this, in addition to it just being a part of the service, why it isn't, it's beyond me. What I would like from this is if it could spit out the installed patches, so the Linux patch versions, the package versions, the Windows KBs or whatever, it could spit those out and say, these instances have been patched these dates and these are the things that I've installed, or I've installed nothing because it was up to date with the baseline. I'd like that very much because those are the sorts of things that people are sort of after still. It's, yeah, great, it patched or it didn't. I need to go work out why it didn't. Has this particular patch gone on this instance in that patch run? Because I'm expecting it. It's a patch Tuesday. That would be really handy.
But I mean, what they give you, John, is they give you the code. So go and make your own changes into it.
I will eventually, with
that
as
would be
part of the
enough.
third version of our landing zone that
Yeah,
I'm building.
I do enjoy the visibility into things, and the running patches is always important. So it's a good job that you guys are doing. It's an important thing, and I enjoy visibility myself. So if I had to choose what's the best thing here, I love that it integrates into Slack and sends me information directly, or a channel that I can follow, like something that makes sense. Okay, if you have hundreds or thousands of messages going, nobody reads those, then you need a dashboard or that does something else. But if you're only sending like failures or something that's important to actually take an action on, then I actually like any way of getting those actions out and handled as fast as possible. Then generally,
Absolutely.
all good.
I think if you're going to be sending those alerts, like you say, they need to be relevant. Otherwise, they just get muted, and people get alert fatigue, and then you miss the things that you wanted to be notified about in the first place. So yeah. Okay. On that note, let's move on to our fourth article for this week. This is from the AWS Containers blog, and this is all about optimizing your container workloads for sustainability. So, Niklas, you've picked out a couple of sustainability angles on some of the posts we've already talked through. This one's directly about sustainability, so I'm going to come to you on this one to talk through how people can optimize their container workloads for sustainability.
Yeah, I found this post really interesting. I love this. It's kind of taking an actual angle, like a concrete angle on what you could do to make your footprint smaller. Like your container, why do you run a large Debian image on it, for example, when you could, depending on your workload, run on something that's like only 2% of the size of that Debian image. And when you have multiple images running, everything multiplies, and you're storing multiple versions of your images in ECR or somewhere else. And then kind of thinking about that, I had never actually thought about containers and what the operating system inside those needs to be before I read this. And I was like, oh, that actually sounds like really interesting. And in addition to that, there was a lifecycle policy for ECR for cleaning up your old images. I think the only bad thing about that was that it gave you a little bit poor options, and it didn't like take into account which ones are still being used. So it doesn't have the data of what's in use. So if you have a system that doesn't kind of automatically take the latest version into use, and you might have something legacy, like you mentioned before, running, and then that might be an issue. But overall, I really like the thing that they came out with a post like this.
John, thoughts on this?
So none of this is particularly new if you spend any time building and running containers. It's just kind of a different slant on things that we already know that we should be doing, right? So the Debian versus Alpine Linux thing to start with is known reasonably. If you care about image sizes, and you care about image sizes not just for sustainability, like I say, that's kind of the new angle, but for start times, because smaller things download and launch faster. So if you spend enough time with containers, you're probably already using things like Alpine Linux, but going distroless brings it down even further. Don't hang on to stuff you don't need in registries. These days, I say these days with a kind of air quotes implied, if you're using like a platform as a service, like a PaaS or a SaaS offering for your image registry, and you're not hosting it on a server yourself, because why would you? It tends to be generally prudent to keep the amount you're storing in these places low, because you're paying for everything. So the less you store, the less you pay. So people should already be doing this. Minimize compute time while building. They touch on this actually at the same kind of angle for this, because unless you're doing the old-fashioned thing of having a server running all the time as a build server, which fine, we all did that 10 years ago because it was Jenkins and we hated ourselves. But now if you're using things like Code Pipeline or GitHub Actions or whatever, you're only kind of using it and paying for it when you're using it. Great. And you have a limited number of minutes or a limited amount of money that you want to spend on these things. So make sure they build quickly. How do they build quickly? Don't install stuff you don't need. Use small images. And sort of keep going like that, and do it in a way that you would be doing anyway from the container side of things, just for fast launches. And it has a nice fringe benefit of it's better for the environment. Great, wonderful. They talk about as well instance types, and you can't find a sustainability article on AWS these days without talking about ARM, because one of the original advantages of ARM was it uses less power. So AWS have sold ARM on a price to performance basis for a very long time now, because they're either cheaper for the same performance or they cost about the same and they give you more performance. How do they do that? They're very power efficient. That's why they're cheaper. So ARM is good for your power consumption. It's also why your phone uses ARM rather than an x86 processor. That's kind of where they come from, really. And it sort of keeps going like that. And it talks about maximizing your utilization, which, again, you should be doing that. But here's another angle. If you need to try and sell it to someone, it's better for the environment, and it's better for our wallet, and it's better for operational overhead, and we don't have to pay people to look after things as much. And it just sort of keeps compounding the benefits of going for a more of a serverless architecture as well, which is all good stuff.
Yeah, but what I picked up there was actually kind of from the architect article. It talks about using spot instances when possible. Like, how's that more sustainable than using a regular instance where possible? Like, I don't really see the sustainability angle there at all. You're still using the exact same capacity that you would be using. You're just paying less for it and kind of using the leftovers in the data center. But
the point is, you are using the leftovers, right? I think spot instances are servers that are running anyway that aren't doing anything. So you're not having to spin up more kit, I guess, is the argument there.
Yeah, but I mean, you're
playing in the fringes here.
Even if you're using even if you're launching a not regular instance or regular container, you're still using the leftovers. I mean, from that perspective.
Yeah, I think with that, you're sort of playing in the fringes more than doing anything tangible.
I mean, my take on sustainability is like, use as little as possible everywhere. Compute, storage, like, if you don't need it, throw it away.
Also a great argument for cost. It sounded like your cat had an opinion on that one as well, John. I'm sure I heard a little meow in the background as we were talking there. And I just wanted to say that since I switched from Intel to ARM, I actually now have to use the heater again in my office because my computer doesn't kick out anywhere near as much heat as my old one used to. So probably still using about the same amount of power net, just, it's on the heater now and not in the computer.
You have to do like I did, Carl. I have an ARM, but I do have this 43-inch monitor here, which heats up real nicely.
Yeah.
So buy a bigger monitor.
Yeah, mine's only 32, but yeah, if I put my hand on the top of it, there is a fair bit of heat being kicked out the top of that. Yeah, perhaps I need to put it on the floor though, so I can actually get the benefit of that for myself. Anyway, on that note, let's move along to our final article for this week, and we have almost got all the way through this episode without talking about AI. But as this is an AWS podcast and AI is still fashionable, and we had to get at least one AI article into this episode. So I think we spoke about hallucination briefly on the podcast last week, John. Certainly has been a topic of conversation, AI hallucination, where AI just gets things wrong, which obviously is a concern if you are using it in your business to make business decisions, etc. So this is an article on the Register, which of course is always a very candid publication, asking the question, can we really fix AI hallucination? And they had an interview with AWS's head of automated reasoning, Byron Cook, on this subject. So, John, thoughts on this one? What did Byron think? Can he fix it?
Yes, he can. So that's a very British joke.
Okay,
that's very British children's television. That joke. I'm sorry. We should get Neil Morrissey on. That'd be great. So, can he fix it? I think the answer is maybe, probably, eventually. I don't think you're ever going to solve this problem, and you're certainly not going to solve it this year. It's just all of a sudden I think this is what the point that Register is making, is this very esoteric, incredibly nerdy discipline all of a sudden has been on front of a stage in front of I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of people, and people are actually talking about this. And it's like, it's this very nerdy discipline is now front and center because people care about this sort of thing. When it's gone from, ChatGPT has just invented a load of legal cases, or what was the other great hallucination? There was someone bought a car for $1. Someone got their flights for free, I think, because of incorrect information. Those sorts of things. This is a problem that needs to be solved, and I guess this is just something that AWS know that they need to solve, hence it was in the keynote, and that they're working on. This is all of the maths behind this goes way above my head. That's why I do podcasts and not, work in mathematics.
Yeah, I was able to do the machine learning specialty, the certification, sure, but that doesn't mean that I understand all the math behind it. I can kind of generalize around it. And I've seen firsthand kind of how the models hallucinate. Like at reInvent, I took part in an Amazon Q session where you were kind of hands-on being put into testing, like do this and you have code here, and it will tell you that there's an error in the code, and then it will give you a suggestion on how to make your code better. You click that and oh, it doesn't actually work. Or you click it again and it does something completely different, and it still doesn't work. And I see a lot of it. I use AI actively for my work, and it's always you need to use a grain of salt when you're asking for different things about it. Like if you ask for some code or some fixing into code, it does a lot of mistakes. Like what John also said, that ChatGPT had to create legal cases for a court trial, and just totally out of there. If you ask ChatGPT about AWS and how everything works in AWS, you 100% you will get the wrong answer for something. It sounds like it's valid, but it's not in real life.
Like Carl and I, it is authoritatively incorrect.
Exactly, yeah. And give you the wrong answer very convincingly. Very confidently.
But I really hope that they can fix AI hallucination, because AI is a great tool for using it. But how do you make it understand when does it combine wrong information and give it to you as the truth?
It's an interesting topic for sure. And one of the quotes that Reg have picked out in the side in the big, oh, you should read this quote, is humans hallucinate all the time too. It's authoritatively incorrect. Is I can talk with confidence about almost anything. It doesn't mean I'm right. But I think people are a lot more trusting of the machine than they are of people, because we've learned over 20,000 years, don't trust anything anyone says without validating it. But it's come off of the computer. The computer must be right. Not in this case.
I mean, it knows everything, so it has to be right.
Well, Abraham Lincoln once said, don't trust everything you read on the internet.
Yeah, that's true. Like we could take that to a whole next level if we started talking about the world politics and how the news are given in Europe, in the States, or somewhere else. So, but let's not go there. That's too political.
I'm just curious, though, Niklas. You mentioned that you do use AI in your job. What do you use?
I've got ChatGPT, a paid license, and I've got Copilot, and I use kind of both of them a little bit, mostly ChatGPT. Well, okay, scratch that. I do have Amazon Q as well. That's hooked to my Visual Studio Code, so I use it where I can. So I try to use multiple to find out which are the best parts of each. Like I really enjoyed ChatGPT helping me in a capture the flag contest last summer. Like I had no idea how to read the assembler, and it pinpointed me the things that are wrong in some of the binaries that were there to be debugged, and gave at least the simpler challenges were like it could give you mostly direct answers. So having an AI assistant, I think, is really good, but you need to decide if it's hallucinating or not.
Well, I think that's a good tip, though, is to use multiple AIs. So use 3 AI assistants and go with the majority, thereby reducing your chances of being wrong.
I think we're about out of time too. I think
I'm
that brings
back.
us to an
Yeah.
end.
But that's a good place to end. I didn't click hang up because you were just too boring or anything like that. No, I really enjoyed talking with you guys again. Well,
Excellent.
First time on a podcast, but again, we've met before. And yeah, if this was episode 95, maybe 195, I'll come and have another chat with you guys, or at some point. I mean, this was fun.
Sounds good. Well, we really appreciate your input, Niklas. Great to join us, and thank you very much for sporting the gold jacket. I don't think you're the first gold jacket owner we've had on the podcast, but I think you are actually the first gold jacket wearer we've had on the podcast. We've had Martin Kilbride. He's a gold
He
jacket.
didn't have it when he came on.
So no, he wasn't wearing it. I don't think.
He didn't own it when he came on. He got it.
Oh, he didn't have it then, right? Okay, yeah.
Neither did Jen Bergstrom. She didn't have hers then either.
Okay,
yeah,
so
Jen got it after me.
Yeah. There we go. So no, we really appreciate your input, and John, as always, great to hear your insights. So that does bring us to the end of our time for season 4, episode 2 of Logicast. If you made it this far, thank you very much for listening. If you enjoyed it, tell your friends. We are available to download from wherever you download your podcasts. And if you'd like to see Niklas's fabulous gold jacket, that we are also available on the Logicarta YouTube channel. So that's all for us for this week. We'll be back next week with another episode of Logicast for you. Until then, see you again next time.